There's a strange moment happening in America right now. A person is making $95,000 a year. They have a respectable job. They did everything they were told to do. Go to school, get a degree, work hard, climb the ladder. On paper, they're successful. But at 10:43 p.m. on a Tuesday night, they open their banking app. They stare at the number. And the thought hits them again. How am I still broke? Not poor, not unemployed, but somehow, always behind. The rent gets paid, but barely. The credit card balance never really disappears. Savings exists, but it feels fragile. One unexpected expense, a medical bill, a car repair, a rent increase. And suddenly the entire system collapses. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Across the United States, millions of people earning between $80,000 and $120,000 feel financially trapped. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they're lazy, but because they're caught inside a psychological and economic system that quietly expands faster than their income ever can. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. My name is Aiden, and today we're going to unpack why so many Americans making what used to be considered great money still feel broke. For decades in America, $100,000 was the finish line. If you made six figures, you had officially made it. Nice house, reliable car, comfortable life. That number became a cultural symbol of success. But something subtle happened over the past 20 years. The symbol stayed the same. The reality changed completely. Let's take a simple example. Imagine someone in a major US city earning $100,000 a year. Sounds great, right? But then the math begins. First, taxes. Federal tax, state tax, Social Security, Medicare. That $100,000 suddenly becomes around $70,000 take home, sometimes less depending on the state. Now divide that across a year. That's roughly $5,800 per month in actual spending money. Still solid. But now reality enters the picture. Rent in cities like Austin, Denver, Seattle, Boston, or Los Angeles. $2,200 to $3,200 per month. Just like that, half the income disappears. Now add the rest of adult life. Car payment, $450. Car insurance, $180. Groceries, $600. Health insurance, $350. Utilities plus phone plus internet, $350. Student loans, $400. Before savings, before investing, before travel, before emergencies, the money is already mostly gone. And here's where the psychological trap begins. Because the person earning $100,000 doesn't feel rich enough to live luxuriously, but they also earn too much to feel comfortable struggling. They exist in a strange middle zone economists sometimes call the upper middle class squeeze. From the outside, their life looks stable. Inside, it feels like financial quicksand. Every step forward requires effort, but somehow, the ground keeps sinking. And that's only the first layer of the problem. Because the real reason this income range feels so stressful isn't just math. It's something far more powerful. Expectation. Here's something fascinating about human psychology. When our income increases, our expectations expand almost instantly. Not slowly, not carefully, instantly. Psychologists call this lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the most powerful financial forces in modern life. But here's the twist most people don't realize. Lifestyle inflation usually doesn't feel like luxury. It feels like upgrading to what seems normal. Think about the typical path. In your early 20s, life is simple. You share an apartment. Furniture is cheap. Your car might be 10 years old. Vacations are rare. But then income rises. Maybe you start earning $80K, then $95K, maybe even $110,000. And slowly, without any dramatic decision, life upgrades. The apartment becomes a one-bedroom instead of a shared place. The car becomes something reliable and newer. Your grocery store changes from discount brands to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. Weekend trips become normal. Better furniture, better clothes, better restaurants. None of this feels extreme. Each step feels reasonable, but stacked together, they quietly absorb every dollar of the raise. Economists sometimes call this phenomenon the invisible raise, because technically your income increased, but your lifestyle expanded at the exact same speed, so your financial position barely moves. And there's another psychological force pushing this expansion even harder. Social comparison. Humans rarely judge success in isolation. We judge it relative to the people around us. If your friends are earning $50,000, your $90,000 feels incredible. But if your coworkers are earning $120K, your $95,000 suddenly feels behind. Even if your life is objectively comfortable, this This creates a subtle pressure to match the lifestyle of the people in your environment. The same neighborhoods, the same restaurants, the same vacations, the same brands, and suddenly the financial bar for feeling secure keeps moving. In fact, studies have repeatedly shown something surprising. Most people believe they would feel financially comfortable if they earned about 30% more than they currently make. Not double, not triple, just 30% more. But when they eventually reach that number, the target moves again, because lifestyle and expectations expand to fill the space available. It's like trying to fill a bathtub with the drains slightly open. No matter how much water you add, it never quite feels full. And this leads directly into an even bigger structural problem. Because for the $80,000 to $120,000 income group, one category of expenses has exploded faster than anything else: housing. And once housing costs rise, the entire financial equation starts to break. If you want to understand why so many people earning $80,000 to $120,000 feel financially stuck, you only need to look at one number: housing. For most Americans today, housing isn't just their biggest expense, it's their financial gravity. It pulls everything else down with it. A generation ago, the common financial advice was simple: spend no more than 30% of your income on housing. But in many American cities today, that number has quietly jumped to 40%, sometimes even 50%. Not because people are reckless, because the market moved faster than incomes ever did. Let's imagine someone earning $95,000 a year living in a city like Denver, Phoenix, or Nashville. After taxes, they might take home around $5,700 per month. Now look at the average rent for a decent one-bedroom apartment: $2,300. That's already 40% of their take-home pay. And that's before utilities, parking, renters insurance, internet. Suddenly the real housing cost climbs closer to $2,700 per month. Now nearly half the paycheck is gone before life even begins. And once housing takes that much oxygen out of the budget, everything else becomes fragile. Saving becomes harder. Investing gets delayed. Emergency funds stay small. One unexpected expense suddenly feels catastrophic. But the deeper issue isn't just housing prices. It's something economists call the cost of stability. When people reach the $80,000 to $120,000 income range, they often reach a life stage where stability becomes important. They want a safe neighborhood, a reliable car, a comfortable home, maybe space for a future family, maybe good school districts. These are not luxuries, they're stability decisions. But in modern America, stability has become extremely expensive. And that creates a strange paradox. The moment people finally start earning enough to build a stable life, the cost of maintaining that stability consumes most of the income. Which is why many six-figure earners quietly say the same thing: I feel like I'm doing everything right, but I'm still barely ahead. And yet, even housing isn't the deepest reason this financial pressure feels so intense. Because the real tension comes from something psychological, something invisible, something tied to how success itself is defined. And that's where the story takes a turn most people never expect. There's a very specific emotional zone that exists between financial struggle and financial freedom. And millions of Americans earning between $80,000 and $120,000 live right in the middle of it. It's the zone of almost comfortable, almost secure, almost successful. From the outside, life looks stable. You have a decent apartment, a good job, a respectable income. But internally, the feeling is very different. Because psychologically, this income range creates a strange tension. You're expected to be doing well. Family assumes you're comfortable. Friends assume you're financially stable. Society labels you middle class or even upper middle class. But internally, the numbers don't always support that story. There's still stress when bills stack up. There's still hesitation before big purchases. There's still that quiet calculation happening in your head every time something unexpected appears. Can I actually afford this? And this creates something psychologists call status pressure. When someone earns $35,000, society doesn't expect luxury. When someone earns $400,000, there's obvious financial freedom. But the $80,000 to $120,000 range sits in an awkward middle space. You're expected to look successful, without necessarily having the financial margin to support that image. So people compensate. Better apartment, better clothes, nicer vacations, not to show off, but to match the identity of success. Because success isn't just about money, it's about appearance, belonging, and social signaling. And modern culture amplifies this pressure constantly. Social media feeds feeds are filled with curated lifestyles. Colleagues talk about investment properties. Friends post vacations in Europe. Suddenly your perfectly normal life begins to feel behind, even if you're objectively doing well. This creates what behavioral economists call the comparison treadmill. No matter how much progress you make, someone else always appears to be further ahead, so the finish line never stops moving. And that's why so many people in this income range feel financially exhausted. They're not failing. They're just running on a treadmill where speed keeps increasing. But here's the interesting part. Once you step back and understand the system, something changes. Because the goal was never just earning more money. The real goal was always something else. Control. And that realization changes everything. Here's the strange realization many people eventually arrive at. The problem was never just income. It was the belief that a certain income level would finally remove financial stress. For decades, that number in America was $100,000. 6 figures meant security. 6 figures meant comfort. 6 figures meant you had made it. But today, millions of people have reached that number and discovered something unexpected. The finish line moved. Because money alone doesn't create financial peace. Margin does. Margin is the real currency of financial security. It's the gap between what you earn and what your life requires. When that gap is small, even a large salary feels stressful. But when that gap is wide, even a modest income can feel surprisingly calm. This is why some people earning $60,000 feel stable, while others earning $110,000 feel constantly pressured. One life has margin, the other has expansion. And once you understand that difference, the conversation about money changes completely. Instead of asking, how do I earn more? The more powerful question becomes, what kind of life actually requires less? Not in a restrictive way, but in a deliberate way. Because the people who eventually escape the feeling of being financially trapped rarely do it by chasing endless raises. They do it by designing a life where income finally outruns expectations, where housing doesn't swallow half the paycheck, where lifestyle upgrades happen slowly and intentionally, where success stops being measured by comparison and starts being measured by control over time, choices, and peace of mind. And once that shift happens, something surprising occurs. The same income that once felt suffocating suddenly feels enough, sometimes more than enough. Because financial freedom was never about reaching a magical number. It was about reaching a point where money stops controlling every decision. And for many people, that moment doesn't arrive when income rises. It arrives when perspective changes. If this video made you rethink how money, income, and lifestyle actually work, then you'll probably enjoy the other deep dives we explore here. And if you want more conversations like this, about psychology, money, and the systems shaping modern life, consider subscribing. Because the more clearly we understand these systems, the easier it becomes to step outside of them.